Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, I'm happy to join you online and thank you again for being here. My name is Brandon Upson. I serve as the Executive Director for Amplify Action. As many of you know, we launched Amplify Action to reach Black men across the Southeast, specifically in South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Alabama. Last week, when we launched, thousands of people joined us, and we're so grateful for your support. Thank you. During our last launch, we were joined by the mayor, Mayor Stephen Reed from Montgomery, Alabama. Last week, we were joined by Mr. Jamie Harrison, who is the South Carolina Democratic nominee for the U.S. Senate. And even before that, we were joined by Congressman G.K. Butterfield from North Carolina as we shared the details of Amplify Action's mission. Since our launch, we have seen great momentum across our region, from joining the Million Man's March in Columbia, South Carolina, to registering hundreds of new voters, new Black male voters, to join in the process. I'm thrilled to have all this support, and I'm so excited and humbled and honored to have your support as we move towards our endeavor. Also, as always, today, we want you to be part of the conversation. Add your questions to the comments section, and we'll answer them throughout our conversation today. So please put them in the chat box and we'll get to them as we go. Next, you will hear from an amazing woman, Miss Ariel Cassell, who serves as our communications manager here at Amplify Action. And she has a very, very special introduction that she wants to do. Ariel, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Excited to be here. Thank you so much for your kind introduction, Brandon. We are grateful to be joined today by Tequila Johnson of the Equity Alliance. Tequila Johnson is an award-winning, cause-driven community organizer and strategist who works to create equity and increase engagement among Black Americans and other communities of color. She's been recognized for educating communities of color about the political process, relevant socioeconomic and political issues, the impacts of impending legislation, and providing people with the tools to exercise self-agency. Her work has been featured in the New York Times, the Washington Post, on CNN, NBC, and various other media outlets across the country. Today, Tequila is the co-founder and co-executive director of the Equity Alliance, a Tennessee-based nonprofit that equips Black and Brown citizens with tools and strategies to strengthen their communities and make the government work better for them. We are so grateful for Tequila joining us this afternoon to discuss more about her work in equity and politics in Nashville and around the entire state of Tennessee. Without further ado, I introduce you to Ms. Tequila Johnson. Tequila, take it away. We're so happy to have you.
Thanks, Ariel. Thanks for having me, guys. As Ariel said, I am Tequila Johnson. I'm co-founder and co-executive director of the Equity Alliance. The Equity Alliance is a nonprofit organization here in the state of Tennessee. We believe in using our voting power in the fight for social justice and economic equality for communities of color. And at the core of our work and our mission is group economics and group politics. We believe that the issues that we face and that we fight every day are the direct results of a system that was put in place to prevent us from ever having power. We also believe that when we work together in unity, we can achieve that power.
Hey, Tequila, good seeing you again. Man,
good to see you as well.
I just got to say that the work that y'all are doing up there in Tennessee is really laying the groundwork and the foundation for the change that we want to see. So I just want to tip my hat to you and to all your cohorts who have come together to make this possible. If you can, talk to us. As you know, Amplify Action, we're focused on Black men. Can you tell us what y'all are doing to engage Black men in Tennessee?
Sure. So we have several things that we do to engage Black men. As you know, I think I told you this yesterday, Brandon. In the whole party, all of politics right now is centered around centering and uplifting the Black woman. And as a Black woman, I appreciate that because we are one of the most disrespected creatures, as Malcolm X said. But what I think is that it has to happen as a unit. We have to uplift the Black family unit if we ever want to see the strength in our community. And for us, it's all about making sure that we're not leaving Black men out of the conversation and that we're reaching them where they are. We believe in, as my grandmama would say, putting the medicine in the milk. We're not trying to, get everybody to be a politician or get everybody to be able to quote the Constitution, but we do want people to be equipped with the tools to understand how it works so that they can feel confident in taking part in the system. So, we have launched our direct collective impact fellowship, and what that is a cohort of guys who have all been impacted by the system in some way but have used that as a way to leverage what they need for their community. So these guys, leaders and powerful within their own rights. I think I told you this yesterday. I learn more from them. I think oftentimes we see Black men and we see, okay, they're not doing this or they're not doing that. But the reality is, Black men have faced just as many injustices as anyone else. We are both. It's not a who has been hurt the most type of situation, but it's we've been hurt as a unit and we're continuing to hurt one another. So for us, it's all about meeting them where they are. Our direct impact collective fellowship is a way for us to engage Black men who have been impacted by the system, but who have used that as a way to really reach back to their community. So, we do some unconventional things. We're not about just going and looking for guys who got a suit on, cufflinks. We're going in the hood looking for who OG is. We want to know who has influence, because oftentimes in these spaces, these progressive spaces, the same 5 or 6 Black people keep getting tapped. And for me, I'm one of those 5 or 6 Black people, but that's not enough for me. I feel like we need to bring more people into the conversation, people who actually have not just been impacted through someone else's experiences, but that have had to fight the system from within the system, that have had to learn the system from within the system. And we really just need to broaden this conversation, because right now the conversation around politics is very monolithic as it relates to Black people.
And you're absolutely right. I always say, and I want to go back because you said a whole lot, and it was a whole lot of truth. I want to, when Doug Jones was elected down in Alabama, it seemed like folks in this space had a big epiphany. It was like, wow, Black people vote, right? And then from that, they said, oh, and Black women vote too. So I know we've witnessed a lot of progressive organizations that have come to the forefront, specifically targeting African American women, but leaving the Black man out of the conversation. And I thank you for recognizing that, because I feel like we as Black men and Black women have an irrefutable symbiotic relationship where we can't rise if we're separated. At the end of the day, we're the same house. Like a house divided will never stand. And I really hope that our work, because you're doing the same thing, reinforces that message. Now, have you found any difficulties or obstacles in educating our counterparts in your work to understand the importance of engaging not just Black women but Black men?
I think there's difficulty in educating our counterparts on everything, because they don't necessarily. And when you say counterparts, are you referring to Black women or are you referring to?
I'm talking about our Caucasian brothers and sisters. Yep.
Brothers and
Caucasian brothers and sisters are also leading the progressive movement in many cases.
This progressive movement, I had this conversation with a Black man yesterday, and I said that the progressive movement has become like the garbage disposal of issues that are non-Republican. So it's almost like if it's anti-Republican, it's progressive. And for me and for most Black people, that is an issue, because we don't all think the same, we don't all agree the same, but we're expected to be progressive and like every progressive issue. And for Black men in particular, I know that it's hard. And so I've tried to educate our progressive communities on just creative ways to, one, start to engage Black men so that they can understand why a lot of those progressive issues are steeped in anti-Blackness. But, also just to not think that they can continue using the same old politics as normal and reach new people. Like, that is the definition of insanity, doing the same thing and expecting different results. And what we see happening in our community right now is this transferal of leadership. You see our older gatekeepers kind of moving out of the way, passing the torch. And, my challenge is always to say, as we are becoming more noticed for our work, as we are being uplifted for our work, the goal is to try and pull other people up, create succession planning so that we're not sitting in some position for 50 years and we can't pass it on. And I don't think our counterparts, white people, get that. I think that white people are okay with having one or two Black people that check the box, and that leaves the whole base of Black people in this conversation, and it really limits our ability to reach a broader group of Black people. Like I said, we got to start digging deep. I told somebody the other day, I don't even consider myself a grassroots organizer anymore. I consider myself a concrete root organizer, because where I'm from and where I organize, it ain't no grass. And so we got to stop thinking that the grass is green on either side, because where we need to reach, it ain't no grass. We gotta plow. We gotta, drill. It's a deeper conversation, and I think about, and I know, Brandon, you're gonna probably ask me this, but I think about the Twitter and the news that's talking about No Name and Chance the Rapper and J. Cole right now. And that is a prime example of how the Black woman and the Black man just get divided on miscommunication, misunderstanding. So yes, it is hard.
And even when we talk about the work that we're doing, there's not a lot of Black-led organizations doing this work. And when new ones come in, I've been having conversations since we got started. It seems like when a new Black-led organization comes into the forefront, folks are like, well, there's already somebody doing this. But then you look at the work that's happening in other spaces, and there's never enough organizations doing the work. Have y'all found that as well? And I know also, folks that look like us aren't the ones who redirect or allocate the funds when it comes to fundraising, right? I know y'all probably had to be as creative as us. Can you tell us a little bit about that as well?
Oh man, when it comes to fundraising and data is another one that we don't often talk about. And Obama said in 2008, data is our generation's oil. And he was absolutely right. And so fundraising and data are two spaces where you don't see a lot of Black people. In this space, Black people are expected to always amplify trauma. We're always expected to come and talk about the things that are hurting our communities, the things that, I would say lead to white guilt, the things that pull on people's heartstrings. There's this romanticizing of Black pain, and Black organizers and Black leaders are expected to just keep uplifting that without ever talking about money, without ever talking about the things that we need in terms of resources to move forward. And, I have this slogan. I always say, woke don't mean broke. And that's saying that just because we understand how the system works, just because we understand people and we want to help and support people, doesn't mean that we can do that without any resources. No other community is expected to do a lot with nothing but Black people. And it kind of draws a wedge in between our organizations. And it also drives a wedge in between Black men and Black women. And it's just hard, What we see is a lot of co-opting of our movements. We saw this with the Black Panther movement. We see it happening with the defund the police movement. We see it happening in all of our neighborhoods. Our movements get co-opted. They become a way of expressing white guilt. And when the white people express white guilt, that's where the money goes. The money doesn't go directly into the hands of the organizations on the ground doing the work. The money goes into the people who feel compelled enough to speak out about it, which is usually white people speaking on behalf of Black people. So it's a very, like I said, these questions are very deep because they're rooted and they're steeped in white supremacy, and a lot of it is unknowing. But I have yet to really see a foundation that was centered around Black people. And, if I were to get on my no name soapbox, which I don't believe in calling out people and telling them what's in their access and influence, but I would say there is a need for a Black foundation that funds civic engagement work. And I don't mean like Black foundation is giving us $1,000 here, 1,000. I mean, like Black Ford Foundation with
Right.
all of our billionaires putting in $5-10 million a year into, some sort of foundation or some sort of something that allows us to continue to draw off interest, like the same things that we see these other foundations doing. We need one that is Black led, Black centered, and is completely unapologetically focused on funding Black civic work.
And because we don't have that financial backing or foundation, it's hard to do the research that we need in order to dig deeper into our work and have a more meaningful impact. When we were doing our research surrounding, Amplify Action's mission, we could never find any good data around what moves or drives Black men outside of what we pull together ourselves from our own actions. So I agree with you 110%. And I'm talking about we need to make it an endowment where, we're pouring or investing, because that's what it is, millions of dollars into this research and into engaging our community. So Tequila, as always, you own it. You own it. I know we got some questions coming in. Let's see what questions they have coming in. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So Euladria Drummond says, we hear a lot about the need for equality. Oh, this is a good one already. The need of equality and not a lot about equity. Could you elaborate and express the difference between the two for those who may not know why equity is just as important during our efforts in activism?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, equality is everyone on the same playing field, equality, we're equal. And the reality is we could never be equal to white people because of the systemic oppression that we face for generations and centuries and centuries. I mean, even going back to the founding of this nation, it was never designed with us in mind. It was never designed with women in mind, especially Black women, Black people. This country was designed for old, rich white men. And like I said, men who own land to have power, to be able to be the ones that speak truth to power and make all the laws and make all the decisions. And so we need to make up for that. I say there's this old metaphor that says equity is similar to me, or equality is similar to saying I'm going to buy a whole bunch of size 5 shoes and I'm going to expect everybody to walk in them. Well, we need a size 8. You know what I mean? So that is what equity is. Equity is making sure everyone has what they need to be on the same playing field. We need different things, especially the African American community, because we've been overlooked. We've been redlined. We've been black coded. We've had everything against us for so long. It's going to take us another 400 years just to catch up. So, I believe reparations are past due. But in the process of that, as we are approaching all of this work, I mean, from all the issues that you could name, we need to approach it from a lens of equity. Black people are pulled over disproportionately by the police. We need equitable policing, not equal policing, equitable. Black people are less likely to own a home. We need equitable home ownership, not equal. Black people are more likely to have an enormous student loan debt. We need equitable student loan reform, not equal. So it is very important that we don't get, we know we need our allies. We know we need people to uplift and support our movements, but we cannot get so caught up in this notion of bridging these gaps with other people that we forget that we are owed a lot more.
And I'll cash that check. We are owed a whole lot, especially in terms of, like you said, equity. It's economic equity. That's one of the big drivers that we're finding that motivates people to take action. When you connect the dots with them about their quality of life, the money that's in their pocket, and their future opportunities to their vote, that's when you can start that conversation. And speaking of that conversation, when you go out to the hood and you find, I forgot how y'all label homeboy in Tennessee, Phuket. that big uncle there in the neighborhood who's running things.
Yeah.
You know, how do
Right.
you start those conversations?
I mean, to be honest with you, I start those conversations the way I would with my uncle or my daddy or any other black man. You know, I don't allow, I think sometimes when you get into doing this work, you allow the buzzwords and the activism and the research to kind of bring you away from the culture. And at the core of what Black organizing is making sure that our culture is represented and uplifted. So for me, I approach them just the way I would any other person. What's going on, homie? What's up, big homie? I need your help. It's, you know, it's no, I think we get, like I said, we get so caught up into this progressive movement narrative, blah, 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 that we forget that, you know, we have a culture that is the foundation of world culture, you know, and we don't have to be apologetic about utilizing our culture and our strengths to get what we want. You know, we can be Black, we can show up in places and be who we are without apologizing for it. And that's just the way we have to start approaching this. We can't conform to a system. The time is to redesign this system to conform to us.
Right, right. And we absolutely need to. I see a lot more questions coming in too. I can pull up the next one. So the next question is, how do you create unapologetically Black safe spaces in the community that are solely for Blacks to come as a place of refuge? Thank you, Mr. Evans, for that.
Thank you, Leland, for president, for asking me these hard questions. So it's one of those things where I go back to group politics and group economics. In order for it to be a safe space for Black people, we have to, one, learn from our elders and be united. Our elders have said over and over again, the things that have driven our movements to failure is us not being united. It's us being so separated and divided around what we claim to be these identity politics that we allow wedges to be formed and co-opting happens. We saw it with the Black Panther movement. I mean, I'm not making this up. It's in several books. So the way you make things unapologetically Black is by centering Black people, but by uniting Black people. You cannot go out and say, I'm only going to get the super woke Black people that are anti this, pro this, da 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 da. No, you have to go out and get the Black people who don't know what that means. You have to go out and find Black people who didn't grow up with the privilege of being reading all of these different books or knowing all of these different philosophies. And when you do that, it becomes about the people. It becomes about us. It's not about a movement. It's not about a narrative. It's not about an ideology. It is about us as people. And that's the only way to create safe, unapologetically Black spaces is by making it about us.
I agree 100%, 10%. One thing that you brought up in that was us going back to our elders. I'm here in Charleston, South Carolina yesterday. The mayor called a meeting or a press conference in front of the John C. Calhoun statue that's in the middle of downtown. And, you know, they're going to work to remove it. But some of our elders from the community, some folks with civil rights track records got up to speak and were, you know, almost booed off the stage. Do you feel there's a disconnect between our generations, you know, the generation that's taking the torch now and the ones that had it right before us?
Absolutely. There's a huge disconnect. I think there's a disconnect within our generation. I think there's a disconnect within the Black community, period, between Black men, Black women. I mean, you name it. And that is because of the trauma that we've experienced. We've never been taught how to disagree and still get the job done. We've always been told that if you disagree with somebody, then you have to not like them. You have to go against everything that they stand for. And when you look at our counterparts, you see them doing the exact opposite. There's a huge generational wealth transfer about to happen between white baby boomers and white millennials. And we're so busy fighting our elders that we can't even take time to get the knowledge that they don't have the wealth, but they have a wealth of knowledge that they can transfer to us. And for me, it's just about picking and choosing what you want to do and utilizing it. You can learn a lot from anybody. You know what I mean? And a lot of our elders, I don't necessarily agree with, but I'm not one of those millennials that's going to sit up here and say, I'm not my ancestors. I'll do this, I'll do that, because we have no idea what they had to go through for us to be here. And even in places and times where we disagree with them, we owe them respect because we're standing on their shoulders, whether we want to or not, whether we agree with the way they got there or not, we're standing on them. And so for me, it's about respect, and especially in public, especially in public. You know, I mean, it's just one of those things where if we don't learn to unite, if we don't learn, and it goes both ways. Like there's some things that they need to discuss as elders, as how they can start to hand the torch off, how they can start to uplift us, how they can start planning, succession planning, so that they're not stuck taking up space and we feel like we got to fight them for access and inclusion, how they cannot gatekeep. I mean, there is healing and there is learning that needs to happen on both sides. But for me as a millennial, I can say that I have been very disappointed in our generation's approach to how we reference our ancestors. It's just, I mean, you know, everything our ancestors been through, we got the nerve, our privilege, where we can just literally cut on our computer, pull up our GPS, you know, go get fresh water, go to the polls and cast a ballot. In our privilege, we have the nerve to say that we're not them because we're stronger. No, I say we're not them because we couldn't dare go through what they had to go through.
Amen. Amen. Like when I come to Charleston, I stay at Senator Ford's house here. He got into the civil rights movement when he was about 17 years old, and been in, you know, working and sacrificing ever since. And you can just see it. You know, his feet are bad because of how much he marched. His back is, he had to have spinal surgery because of some of the beatings that he took that, you know, compounded injuries over time, you know. And I've witnessed and been working in different spaces where I've come across Jesse Jackson and seeing, you know, the trauma that his body has even been under. And there's so many others who have taken the beatings for us. And I think at the very least, we should acknowledge what they had to do in their time when they were where we are now. And also realize what you said. It's mutual respect. If you want respect, you have to give it too, right? I think that's just a norm, just straight code right there. You got to respect others. And I know one of the conversations that's bubbling up now throughout all of this work is, you know, marching with a mission and protesting with a purpose and bringing an agenda to the forefront. How necessary do you think it is at this time that we have a uniform agenda across the country?
I think it's very important that we come up with an agenda. I think it's hard, you know. I pray and support the people that come up with it. If I'm one of them, pray for me, because you know you're gonna get attacked. People are gonna say, "What gives you the right to speak for all Black people?" But I think at the core of developing a Black agenda is unity. Um, I think sometimes people say, "Okay, the revolution was started in the streets," and we all agree with that. And there's like, "Okay, the activists are against the Black elected officials. The Black elected officials are anti-Black business people," and I think that kills our movement. What we have to do is we have to unite. We have to understand that everybody serves a purpose. We have to move like army ants. Nobody, when you see a row of ants, they're not worried about who's getting credit. They're not worried about who's leading. They're not worried about that. They are worried about the mission. And at the core of what's happening right now is ego over activism. Ego is driving a lot of this work. Ego is driving a lot of these conversations. And what we need to do is shift from being about ourselves and being about the work. We need to be people-centered and mission-driven. And right now, we're driven by ego. Social media has created ego activism.
So we can drop the mic right there. Thank you for coming to keep like you on it. We got a question coming in that's, you're touching on it right now. Ariel Corinne asks, how do we foster a conversation about the need for unity within Black men without glorifying the divisions that already exist?
This is so hard, and I'll be very transparent. It took me 3, 4, 5 years of therapy to understand why my personal trauma prevented me from being vulnerable enough to allow a Black man to express his vulnerability and for me to accept it and for us to support one another. And
Mm.
so I think the first thing is we have to destigmatize therapy. We have to destigmatize what it looks like to heal from trauma so that we can begin to heal as individuals, and then we can have deeper conversations. But it's hard to have a deep conversation and be open-minded when you're hurting, because your trauma and your hurt will blind you. And so I think when I speak to Black men, when I speak for Black men, because I look at them and I see myself. But it wasn't until I was able to take the blinders that I had on that were a result of trauma. And it's not our fault that we're hurt. It's not our fault that we grew up in broken homes. It's not our fault that the majority of us don't know what it feels like to be in conversation with a man, because we never saw it or we never had it. But what we can do is take ownership of where we are today as Black women, as Black men, and as a Black nation and community. And we can begin to try and start the process of healing so that we can pass off these things to our children. We can break these generational curses and we can learn to love and coexist. But I agree with her that is very hard, because for Black women, I mean, I can poll 100 Black women, and I guarantee you more than half of them will say their parents told them, don't worry about these men. Get your, F these men. I'm gonna say that. Get yourself together. And the reality is, we need to teach our kids how to coexist, how to be in relationship, because relationship drives the world. And that to me is what we need to do. We need to really heal and just learn to show up and be authentic, and be okay with saying that I'm hurting. This hurts me. Be okay with saying I don't know how to talk to a Black man. I don't know what a Black man needs, and be open to inviting them in and letting them tell you what they need. And when they tell you, don't take it personal. And that goes vice versa.
Man, you got us blowing up over here. Everybody's loving what you're saying because you're speaking the truth. Next question here, coming up from the live feed. We got Mr. Rashad Gaines. How does the community of organizers, activists, and advocates work together when we are all competing for the same dollars, the same media opportunities, the same base, the same support?
I'm about to run through the church. Listen, Rashad. Listen, this is shouting material right here, because we are so used to getting the crumbs off the knife that they cut the cake with in the cake factory that we don't realize that we have our own eggs, we have our own butter, we have our own flour, and our own oven. You know what I mean? And I think that the reason why we are competing for dollars is because we all see what's happening in the fundraising world. Like I'm very aware of what's happening in the fundraising world. There's this notion of tables and this collective impact that Black people who have gone through traumatic experiences, who for years have been pitted against each other and co-opted and divided and wedged. We're told, okay, come in, and the only way you're going to get prime or maximum funding is by competing or is by working together. But there's no space for us to even start talking about what collective impact looks like. We've been told that if you are pro this and you're anti this, you guys can't coexist. And what happens is white people have taken advantage of that. They have started forming state tables, pulling all of us together, getting the pie, and then scraping the crumbs off the knife that they cut the pie with for us. And I think that at the core of it is you have to understand that there is a bakery of pies. There is no such thing as limited resources. It's just limited thinking. We only don't have it because if all of it, the difference between 100,000 and $1 million is collective impact. And the only way we will get that is if we come together. I've been in situations where there have been other organizations that said, well, we don't really like the Equity Alliance because, they are political or they seem too polished. I mean, Black girl from the hood, I ain't never been told I was polished, so I'll take that. It means I'm arriving. But we've seen that. And then we've seen national organizations come in with a plan, pull us in, pull this same group of people in that said they couldn't work for us, get millions of dollars and feed us crumbs. And that's what continues to happen. Until we unite, we will fall divided every time.
I don't have anything else to say. Next question. Thank you so much. While they're pulling up this next question, Tequila, like for being here, for being as honest as you are, just for being you. Thank you. Mr. Evans asks, where do I write where do I write a check to support you?
So you can go to www.theequityalliance.org, and we have multiple ways to pay. You can pay ActBlue, PayPal, and our address to write a check and mail us a check is on there as well. Thank you, Leland.
and I look forward.
Black women like from Black
men. I look forward to we're a 501c4 organization. Y'all are a C4 as well, right?
We have a C3 and we have a C4 sister organization, the Equity Alliance Action Fund.
Gotcha. Yeah, I look forward to us continuing to support each other and continuing this conversation. We've done our due diligence in reaching out to the folks that we knew of, because there's maybe more out there that we've reached out to, so that when we come into a space, we're making sure we're not stepping on any of the toes of the people who are actually doing the good work. One of our chief officers on this in our organization always says, well, if everyone was doing it the right way, other people like us wouldn't need to come into the space. But I really feel like you are doing it the right way, and you're doing everything that needs to be done to build the foundation, to mobilize our people, and to get good positive change in our communities. And that's what we want to be a part of. So I'm just, again, honored and blessed to be able to have you on here and for us to have these continued conversations as time goes on. And I see we got young voters on here. Thank y'all for joining us. Mr. Leland Evans, he said he can write the check. So I appreciate it. And everyone else who's joining us today. And Tequila, I just want to say your words have been powerful, have been inspiring. The work that you're doing in this political season is opening up doors, not just cracking windows. Shoot, you're even knocking down the walls. And that is what we need. And in our history, because of the trauma and the institutions that have been put in place to limit us from doing and having this type of impact in our community, I understand that we have to continue to work together, and we have to have strong women like you fighting your fight. And we are looking to make sure we equipped Black men to be able to fight right alongside you and have the same impact in the community so that we can all rise together. I just want to thank you again for everybody who's joining. I only have a couple of things. I don't like to leave y'all without some action items, and we can keep Tequila on the screen here. She shared her website with you where you can learn more about the Equity Alliance, not the equality. We're talking about equity here, but you can learn more about Amplify Action at our website at ampourvote.com. Again, that's ampourvote.com. We all know that it takes money in order to do this work and do it well and go as deep as we need to go and to get into our communities. So we ask for your financial support as well. Please donate to us. Our link is in the chat right now on all social media. It's on our page, and it's also a button at the top of our website where you can give. The last thing I ask for you to follow us. Follow us on Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, Facebook. We're everywhere. I think we got a TikTok even now. But follow us and share it with at least 5 of your friends. In order for us to get the message out there, we need to use the best form possible, and that's word of mouth. That's you joining us so we can do this work together. Tequila, I thank you again. Do you have any last words of wisdom to leave our audience with?
I always say my slogan is always trust Black women and uplift Black men.
Amen. We can put that in
and
the
that's
book.
it. I think we've said everything we said. Yes. Oh, can't wait for y'all to come to Tennessee.
Hey, as soon as, I'm trying to be responsible with this whole COVID thing. But as soon as I can, I don't care if I have to walk. I'm going to be in Tennessee first thing smoking.
Yeah. Okay. I'm holding you to
that. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you for joining us, Tequila. So, everybody, this was a great conversation. We had so much fun. That's a Black queen right there. She is out here doing the work. She represents everything that we not only need collectively, but we are looking to fill that gap in our community as well. It's time. I love that graphic that just came up. Y'all can put it back up. It's time to amplify the equity in our communities, right? It's in our hands to do it. We've been waiting on Superman for long enough, right? We see in this time that we're in right now that the marching and the protesting is part of how we get to the solution. The other part, in my opinion, is we have to be able to influence the policy and the policy makers. And the way we do that is through our own civic education and us showing up to be a part of the process. And we do that by getting registered to vote and casting our ballot at the ballot box. Because at the end of the day, when we think about what happened to our dear brother, George Floyd, every person who has the authority to bring justice in that situation was elected to do their jobs. They were hired by the voters. So if we are not holding them accountable when they're doing wrong and committing injustices, it's our job to vote them out. That's how we hold them accountable. So Amplified Action's mission, again, we are here to focus on Black men because it's time to fill that gap in our community. We have everything we need to create the change we want to see. So I thank you for joining us this week as we launch Amplify Action. Your support means the world to all of us. Can you bring Ariel back on, please? Please stay engaged with us as we continue. Again, we're a 501c4 nonprofit, so we can't advocate for a specific candidate, but we are fighting for the issues that impact our community. Ariel is in Atlanta, Georgia. Yeah. She is our communications director. She's an amazing asset to our team, even though, and again, I said this earlier, we are focused on Black men. We understand that it is beholden and a task and responsibility that Black men and Black women have to work together to share the lift to make it happen. And Ariel, I thank you for joining me on this ride, being part of our team, leading and giving your insight and your amazing experience to this team. I just thank you. Do you have anything to share with everybody before we sign off?
I just wanted to remind all of our Black men watching, we love you all. We want your voices to be heard. I am passionate about this project because as your Black sister, I'm here to support. Like she said, we need to uplift our Black men. I'm very passionate about uplifting you all, building your voice, rising your voices and amplifying your voices and your votes. So please go ahead and go to our website, check it out, and check out all the ways that we have for you to become involved. We love you. We want you to have your voices heard. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here today, Brandon.
All right. Thank you. Again, together we can rise, we can build, and we can amplify. And that's the movement. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.